We are talking some NFL draft prospects for the Miami Dolphins on today's show. I am Nic Rohloff. Mel Kiper, one of the best in the business, dropped his first official updated top 25 big board for the upcoming draft in the offseason. So I'm going to take a look at some of the prospects that he had in his top 25 that I think the Miami Dolphins could benefit by taking or that I could see them being interested in. But I do think it's probably smart to first talk about what is the biggest need for the Miami Dolphins this offseason. I think the number one need for Miami is an interior offensive lineman. The left guard and right guard spots have been a disaster over the past season. You lost Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones in free agency. I would have wanted them replaced regardless, but you need to fill those vacancies. Safety needs to be an important position of need too. Don't know what's going to happen with Javon Holland. You also need to upgrade from Jordan Poyer. Interior defensive line is a need. Backup quarterback. And then I'd probably label off-ball linebacker too alongside Jordan Brooks as the fifth biggest need for the Miami Dolphins. But I think it's important to talk about what the Dolphins actually need from a team standpoint. And if you want the best Miami Dolphins draft content, make sure you subscribe, but make sure you also follow me over on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. Anytime nuggets, news, and rumors drop around the NFL draft, we're going to talk about it over there before on our YouTube shows. And we will also be doing deep dives on NFL prospects and potentially fits in Miami over there as well. So go give me a follow at Nic_Rohloff. All right, if you live under a rock and haven't been paying attention to our content, the Dolphins do hold the 13th overall pick in this draft. They are picking 13th in the first round, 48th in the second round, and we won't fill you in with every other pick the Dolphins have in this draft, but they'll be able to fill an important position in the first round with a top half pick. And I am looking specifically at my two biggest positions of needs, either an interior offensive lineman or a safety spot with that 13th overall pick. So when I'm looking at Mel Kiper's big board here, I'm looking for offensive linemen. I'm looking for safeties and defensive backs that could potentially go in that 10 to 15 range where Miami is selecting. And these three are the perfect three to talk about on today's show. Kelvin Banks Jr., who is labeled as the top offensive lineman by Mel Kiper, number 10 overall out of Texas. Will Campbell right behind him as the 11th overall prospect from LSU. And then Malachi Starks, the defensive back, but I classify him as a safety, but he's a DB out of Georgia as the 14th overall prospect. And we're going to talk in depth about all three of these guys on today's show. I both think that Banks and Campbell will ultimately be interior offensive linemen potentially, so they could fill the left guard and right guard spot for the Dolphins. But that number 14 guy on Mel's big board, Malachi Starks, is my top guy at the moment for the Dolphins with the 13th overall pick. It's no guarantee he's going to be there, even though Kuiper's got him at number 14 right now. I have Starks as a top 5 player in this class. I just simply do. When you take away positional value, which is why I think he's so low on Mel Kiper's big board, Starks is unbelievable. And I think the NFL might make the same mistake they did a couple of years ago with Brian Branch, who is a safety defensive back coming out of Alabama. He slipped all the way to the second round. The Lions picked him, and he's one of the best young safeties in all football. I feel the same way about Starks. I think he should be a top 5, top 8 pick, but I don't know if he will because of his safety position. He's been absolutely spectacular for the Georgia Bulldogs over the last 3 seasons. In this past season, he was great once again. Totaled 62 tackles, had a missed tackle percentage of 8.1, which ranked in the top 20% of safeties and just overall missed tackle percentage in college football this past year. Allowed just a completion percentage of 65.4%. He can do it in coverage. He can do it in the run game. I am a massive fan of Malachi Starks. And like Brian Branch Jr., Starks is so versatile in the way he plays and where he lines up on the football field. You will not see him in the same spot often. And boy, do I love versatility. It's what I expected Javon Holland to be able to do this year, but he was not able to do that under Anthony Weaver. And we know Weaver comes from a Ravens background that had Kyle Hamilton, who slipped to pick 14 in the draft due to safety value in the NFL. Could Starks fall to 13 and Miami use the pick on him and use him like Hamilton? I mean, look at him. He could line in the slot, line in the box, line up deep as that traditional rover safety. Like, I love Malachi Starks' versatility. He can defend in the slot against tight ends, against slot wide receivers. He is not afraid to get in dirty on the inline, making tackles in the run game. There was a couple plays when watching his film in the first game of the season against Clemson where he was literally lined up in the nickel, lined up in the slot. He diagnosed the QB option. He diagnosed an inside zone read and came crashing inside, read the offensive lineman's blocking, filled the hole, and made the tackle at the line of scrimmage. He is absolutely fantastic in the run game, and he is a surefire tackler, which is something that the Dolphins desperately need at that safety position. He's also very fluid in coverage. He almost looks like a corner out there when matched up sometimes in one-on-one situations in the nickel. It's truly impressive, and I think his versatility is something that would really be welcomed in Miami, and since the Dolphins need to address the safety position pretty big time in the draft in the offseason, I think it's a player that we should keep our eye on for quite a big-time margin here, because whether it's alongside Holland, replacing Holland, it doesn't matter. He would be someone that is awesome as a Miami Dolphin. He is my top NFL draft target, but let me know who yours is. Drop a comment down below and let me know who your top NFL draft prospect is right now. With that being said, I wouldn't complain with the other two offensive linemen we talked about. I would not be upset if the Dolphins ultimately went with one of Kelvin Banks or Will Campbell if they were available. They are the top two offensive linemen available according to Mel Kiper. I would probably second that from Mel as well. Kelvin Banks Jr. and Will Campbell, both versatile. I love versatility if you cannot tell. Both have played left tackle their entire career since Campbell came in to LSU as a true freshman, 18 years old. He's been starting at left tackle. Banks has started the last 3 years as well at left tackle, but both project as a player that can play inside, so it could fit in Miami's system at left guard, right guard. Kelvin Banks Jr. had the better 2024 year. There is no disputing that. But if you look at their careers, their intangibles, and who projects better in the National Football League, I think it's Will Campbell. I do. I think he's got the makeup, two-time captain. And if you are going to come in as a true freshman and start at 18 years old at left tackle in the SEC for LSU, that tells me a lot about your character. That tells me a lot about your grit, your toughness, and it's something that Miami would absolutely welcome. I think Will Campbell would be a home run pick if he was there at 13. Will he be there? I am unsure. There's a lot of offensive lineman needy teams that could be taking him inside the top 10. But if you had to ask me between Kelvin Banks Jr. and Will Campbell which one I would rather have right now, I'd probably lean Will Campbell. But if both Starks and Campbell are off the board, I would have no issue taking Kelvin Banks Jr. at 13 either. All right, we got more prospects to talk about here in just a second, but we are sponsored by PrizePicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's so easy to play. All you do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stat projections, and you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. And with the postseason here in professional football, it's the best place to get real money action and take advantage in the final weeks of football as well. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money with over 10 million users playing today. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value to your lineups. And the reason why I love playing PrizePicks is versatility. That's the word of the day here on today's show, because you can play college, you can play professional, you can combine the two, you can combine football, basketball, hockey, golf. It does not matter. That's why I love playing PrizePicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform. They also give you free entries sometimes. Well, you see it right there, more than half a yard for Will Howard in the passing game. I'm also taking less than on both Jeremiah Smith receiving yards and Riley Leonard passing yards for the national championship in college football. Join me and the millions of others playing PrizePicks on a daily basis right now. And when you sign up today, you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. All you got to do is you use code CLNS after you play that first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks is the absolute best. PrizePicks, run your game. Just rounding out the conversation on the offensive lineman and why I think it's so important the Dolphins address this position in the draft is because look at what you got. You took Patrick Paul in the second round last year, and I know some fans are going to be like, really, another offensive lineman in the top 50? But you just have to do it. You have to invest on the interior offensive line. You have your left tackle of the future in Patrick Paul. Now, will he be starting next year? Depends on if Armstead retires or not. But you have Aaron Brewer under contract for 2 more years. He was great this past season at center. And Austin Jackson returning at right tackle. But you need to fill left guard and right guard. And now you can fill one of those spots in free agency. But I truly believe it would benefit Miami if they invested in the entire interior offensive line once again with a top 50 selection. Whether it's 13th overall, whether it's a trade down from 13 to the early 20s, taking Tyler Booker from Alabama or another interior offensive lineman, or just taking an offensive guard in the second round at pick 48. It doesn't matter to me. Either way, I think as we leave day 2 of the NFL draft, there just needs to be a selection from Chris Grier on the interior offensive line to try to address that position for the long haul, because we're just seeing so much turnover at the position right now. We need someone to stick there for the foreseeable future on a cheap contract, like a rookie deal that would benefit and help the Dolphins address other positions in free agency. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because we are going to have the top Miami Dolphins NFL draft coverage. Draft is a long ways away in late April, but we'll have you covered from now until then. So hit that sub button for the best draft coverage on YouTube. All right, before we move on to some other prospects, I do want you to keep an eye on this man right here. His name is Josh Simmons. He's an offensive lineman from Ohio State. He basically missed this entire year due to a knee injury, but he is actually ranked as the 13th overall prospect from Mel Kiper Jr. He is a true offensive tackle, so I kind of rule him out a little bit for Miami, because I don't envision him moving inside potentially to left guard or right guard like a Kelvin Banks Jr., like a Will Campbell. But Simmons might eventually become the top true offensive tackle in this draft. A lot of people have him rising up their boards early here in the offseason. All right, let's look at some other prospects for the Miami Dolphins potentially with that 13th overall pick, or if they wanted to trade down from 13, gather some assets, and go somewhere else. These are 5 guys that really caught my eye. Jalen Walker, the linebacker from Georgia, who is ranked 9th on Mel's big board. Tyler Warren from Penn State, the tight end, at number 12. Jahad Campbell at number 20, who is a linebacker from Alabama. And then 2 guys in the back end here, Luther Burden, the wide receiver from Missouri, and Kenneth Grant, of the defensive lineman on the interior from Michigan. And a couple of these guys really intrigue me. And I want to start with the big fella. Yes, you heard me right. I wouldn't complain with Kenneth Grant. And maybe 13 is probably a reach here, but who knows? Maybe in a month or 2, he climbs up boards. And I think he will after the NFL Draft Combine. Kenneth Grant is a physical freak. Like, it's disgusting how quick, how athletic he is for the size that he has. And he's got an incredible motor as well that just makes me giddy about him potentially being on the interior next to Zach Sealer and learning with Sealer. And he could be that Christian Wilkins long-term replacement. I mean, this guy's 6'3", 339, but I will never get this clip out of my mind of an Ohio State running back breaking free, getting down the left sideline. Grant, who is in the middle, who kind of got pushed out of the way, wasn't in the play originally, but then starts sprinting down the fields and ultimately catches this running back 30, 40 yards down the sideline. This guy is a physical monster. He can beat you in pass rush situation. He's a big-bodied guy that can stop the run. He's athletic. I'm telling you right now, if you are noticing something, I trust you that Kenneth Grant will be high on Chris Grier's board. Because if he took Christian Wilkins back in the day, Kenneth Grant, I'm not going to say is a Christian Wilkins clone, but Wilkins coming out of Clemson was really athletic as a run stopper interior defensive lineman from Clemson. Grant is very similar in a lot of ways to Christian Wilkins because of his athleticism, his motor. I think the Dolphins will be very intrigued with Kenneth Grant. 13 might be too high, but trade 4 or 5 spots down, draft him at 18, 19, I would be absolutely all in. Another guy that a lot of Dolphins fans have been mentioning in our chat as well as online is the tight end from Penn State, Tyler Warren, who has been an absolute monster for the Nittany Lions, and he had an incredible year. 104 receptions, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. A lot of fans want him, and I understand why. Jonnu Smith has 1 year left on his contract. He would play well in a 2 tight end set. He can block, he can pass catch, he can run routes, he can beat you at the physicality point of attack 2, with the catch radius and catch point. I get it. But my thing is, is that I don't know if a tight end 2, future tight end after this year with Jonnu Smith, is the best use of your first-round pick when you have to address that offensive line, address that tight end spot. Do not think it makes sense for me to draft a tight end 2 or a tight end 1 for next year. I get he's the best tight end, but if you really want to take a tight end, it's a pretty deep class. You go Helm from Texas in the second round. Hell, maybe even Harold Fannin Jr., who was mocked by Dane Brugler out of Bowling Green in the second round. I think this is a deep class at tight end to where I would not spend a premium pick in the first round on a guy like Tyler Warren when there's other needs on this roster. But the good news is, folks, well, with the 13th pick in the draft, the Dolphins will be able to add a good player to this roster. And it's key because Miami, as where they currently stand with their roster needs and their cap situation, they need good players on cheap contracts. And you're going to get one in the first round. So you got to hit on this pick, whether it's an offensive lineman on the interior, defensive lineman, linebacker, safety, doesn't matter. Got to hit on this pick. And I believe Miami will have a good crop to select from when they're picking 13. And hell, they picked Chop Robinson last year. Let's hope they bounce back again and have 2 straight years of great first-round picks. All right, I'll do it for this show here. Make sure you are subscribed. We're still dropping a lot of content, man. And if you are watching this video and you're still clicked on and aren't subscribed, you clearly like what we're bringing to the table, at least in sub capacity. So make sure you subscribe and join us here at Dolphins Today.